Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Frayed Truths in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 11. The answer is no. Kakashi sits in that same chair in the hospital room, his elbows resting on his knees. He stares at his student, still in the bed in front of him, and his jaw clenches as the words run through his head. Your value outweighs his. From a tactical standpoint, it makes sense. And when he forces himself to think about it impersonally, he even agrees with it. He's a former member of Umbu Black Ops, he understands the harsh reality of shinobi life. That they exist in order to act as tools, and that some tools are more useful than others. As a resource to the village, Sasuke has the potential to become very valuable. But he is still just a child. War is on the horizon, all of them can feel it. And Tsunade can't afford to think about in another 10 years, she needs to think about now. Kakashi understands the need for that type of mindset. And was Tsunade's decision a strategic one, Kakashi might have forgiven her for it. But instead, she made it personal. This isn't about strategy. Isn't about resources. This is about Sakumo. Kakashi isn't oblivious to Tsunade's dislike of Sakumo, nor to how that dislike extends to him. For the most part, he doesn't let it bother him. She has her reasons, and after 2 decades, Kakashi is far too used to being blamed for his father's mistakes. Far too used to people calling them mistakes to waste any time trying to convince people they weren't. Let them despise him. Let them shun him. They can call him his father's son, and he will wear the accusation with pride. Because the angry boy who once spoke Sakumo's name with shame is now proud to share his blood. But receiving the blowback of his father's actions himself is something he's learned to accept. It's another thing entirely when someone else is being caught in them. If the only one affected is him, then let Tsunade hate his father as much as she wants, but now it is Sasuke whom her grudge is affecting, and that isn't something he can accept. None of this is his fault, Kakashi thinks, hands clenching under his chin as he stares down at his student's closed eyes. You're allowing his suffering to continue because of a piece of history he has no part in. Kakashi is a Konoha shinobi at heart. He exists for the Hokage to command, and should she order him to die, then he will walk to his death. But this is one order that he doesn't think he can follow. How can he? How can he, when he promised? Don't worry, Sasuke. I'll protect you with my life. Kakashi presses his mouth into a tight line, staring down at Sasuke's face. He's so still, not a hint of the mental torture he's currently experiencing showing in his expression. Kakashi recalls feeling Sasuke's fingers twitch just a few days ago, and he's beginning to think he imagined it. Kakashi tries to imagine the nightmare that the kid must be living in at this very moment, the battle going on behind his eyes that only he can see, and he experiences the same level of horror he felt when Tsunade first told him. He doesn't quite understand how Sasuke can still be trapped in a genjutsu without Itaka present to hold the illusion in place, but it obviously isn't a normal genjutsu, it doesn't abide by the same rules. He wonders how time is working in Sasuke's head, if it's been the same amount of time in there as it's been out here, or if the seconds are passing infinitely slower. He hopes to God it isn't the same for Sasuke as it was for him. 3 days in a single moment. Because if it is, then Sasuke is a lost cause. Death would be a mercy. But no. Kakashi can't let himself consider that. Tsunade tried to heal his mind, after all, surely she'd be able to tell if his mind felt that broken. He hates just sitting here. He hates being so helpless. His student is being tortured, and all he can do is sit here and stare at him. Screw that, Kakashi decides. It's a bad idea. Jiraiya already warned him against it. But Tsunade just shot down his best hope, and he's desperate. If there's even a slight chance of breaking his student free of Itaka's grasp, then any risk is worth it. He moves from the chair, kneeling on the floor by Sasuke's bed. This close, he can see a faint scar he never noticed before, a slight line on his upper lip. It must be years old. He reaches around his head and pulls up his Hitaiate. Obito's Sharingan, forever blazing, focuses on Sasuke immediately. With his hand, he gently pulls up one of Sasuke's eyelids. The hospital room falls away, replaced by a world of black, white, and red. It's just like the dream world Itaka placed him in, only instead of tied to a post, he finds himself standing in the middle of a street. A familiar street. He's standing in the Uchiha district. The smell hits him first, even before the screams. The pungent, metallic scent of blood. It takes him back years, to waking up next to Rin's body, a sea of blood surrounding him. It's incredibly vivid and incredibly well crafted. Usually sight and sound are enough to convince a person that the illusion is real. Most genjutsus don't bother with smell. The screaming reaches him next, and he knows what this is. He knows before he sees the bodies falling, the blood splashing through the air, the weapons flying. He knows. He watches as an image of Itaka brings his katana down on a screaming woman's throat, and he thinks he might be sick. Sasuke isn't just trapped in a nightmare, he's trapped in a memory. Kakashi tries to dispel it the normal way. Tries to grab onto the illusion and wrench it apart, but he can't get a grip on it. He can't even touch it. He searches for Sasuke, trying to block out the screaming, even as the illusion tries to drag him in. It's too bright, too real, and Kakashi fights to remember that he's kneeling on a hospital floor, that there's linoleum beneath his knees, not blood beneath his shoes. Itaka's voice rings through the dreamscape. It comes from nowhere, from everywhere. Run, run. Cling to your wretched life. Then one day, when you have the same eyes, come back and face me. The landscape warps and changes. Now he's standing in a bedroom. A man and woman are kneeling as Itaka brings his sword down on their necks. Kakashi turns away before the blow lands, breathing sharply. This isn't real. None of this is real. Find Sasuke. Sasuke is easy to spot now, and the sight of him breaks Kakashi's heart. He looks the same age he was when this happened, and he's curled himself into a ball in the corner. His face is buried in his knees, his hands pressed over his ears. When Kakashi walks over to him, he doesn't react. He's so young and so scared, and for a moment, Kakashi can't connect the child in front of him with his student, because Sasuke's never looked so fragile. For all the trauma that he's been through, Sasuke's never once shown it, and the boy in front of him now looks less like his student and more like a stranger. Behind him, there's a loud thud as two bodies topple to the floor. Blood seems to melt from the walls. Kakashi forces himself to ignore it, even as he chokes on the iron in the air. Sasuke, he says. Then again, more insistent, Sasuke. Sasuke doesn't respond. Kakashi reaches out slowly, placing his hand on the child's knee. Sasuke flinches with his whole body, jerking back and slamming his head against the wall. A whimper escapes his lips, and Kakashi spots the glint of tears on his cheeks. Foolish little brother. The walls begin to melt away. Growing desperate, Kakashi grabs Sasuke by the shoulders. Sasuke. Sasuke, it's Kakashi. I need you to hear me. You're not even worth killing. The walls are replaced by the streets again, thick with blood and bodies. Screams fill the air, loud and sharp and terrified, all of them pleading for mercy, and Kakashi head spins with a panic that makes it hard to breathe. Sasuke, Sasuke, look at me. Run, run. Cling to your wretched life. Sasuke, it's a genjutsu. It's all in your head. One day, when you have the same eyes. It isn't real. Something seems to wrench him away, his entire body suddenly yanked. The screams and bodies and blood disappear abruptly, and he's staring into a familiar face, hands tight on his shoulders. The floor is hard beneath his knees. Are you thinking? I told you not to do that. He blinks, screams still echoing in his ears. The face in front of him sharpens as it comes into focus. Should have known you'd try it anyway, Jiraiya says. You dumbass. You almost got trapped in there, didn't you? I told you that you would. Kakashi sits there for a moment, gathering himself. The walls and ceiling and floor are white. The air conditioner is making a steady humming noise somewhere to his left. The room smells sharply of antiseptic. He blinks a few times, his vision tinted the color of blood. His eye is burning in his head, and he realizes his Sharingan is still uncovered, rapidly draining his chakra. He quickly pulls his Hitai down. Are you alright? Jiraiya asks. The remnants of the illusion are still clinging to the fringes of his mind. It takes him a moment to focus. When he does, his gaze goes to Sasuke. His eyes are still closed, he appears to be sleeping peacefully. Kakashi recalls the vivid image of his student, 7 years old and curled up in a ball, and he feels sick. How can he look so calm, laying on that bed? Kakashi, Jiraiya prompts, frowning. Kakashi pulls his gaze from the bed to look at him. The massacre, he says. That's what he's seeing. That's what he's stuck in. Jiraiya's quiet for a moment. Ah shit, he finally sighs, and the words carry a heavy weight to them. That's just, fucking hell. Remind me to punch Itachi extra hard when we find him, would you? Kakashi stands up, and he's still not fully there, so the words take a moment to process. He shakes his head, trying to rid his nose of the scent of blood. Itachi's voice echoes in his head, cold and cruel. What? He asks in surprise, once the sentence finally registers. When we find him. I talked with Tsunade. She's going to authorize you to go after him, but I'm coming along. Kakashi blinks. He wonders what could have changed her mind, but so long as she did, he honestly doesn't care. He thinks back to that small child in the corner, and his breath escapes him shakily, his chest tight. When do we leave? He asks. Tomorrow morning, Jiraiya tells him. I hope you have an idea where to start looking, because I've got nothing. I do, Kakashi assures him. He turns back to Sasuke's prone form, remembering the illusion he just saw, and it feels like a hand has wrapped around his lungs, squeezing. Gently, he brushes a strand of hair from the boy's face. I'm going to get you out of there, Sasuke. I swear. Chapter 12. Chapter text. Naruto? Are you alright? Naruto blinks, looking up from the spot of the countertop he's been staring at. Huh. Iruka-sensei is looking at him with a concerned expression. So lost in his head, it takes a moment for the question to register. I asked if you were alright, the teacher repeats. He's frowning, peering at Naruto closely. You've been staring down at that bowl of ramen for nearly 5 minutes now. You've barely eaten any. He stares down at the noodles in front of him, poking them with his chopsticks. It looks delicious, but the thought of eating it makes him feel queasy. Just not hungry, I guess. Iruka's expression quickly goes from concerned to alarmed. Okay, now I know something is wrong. He pauses, then guesses, is it Sasuke? Naruto grinds his teeth. He jabs at his ramen with more force than before. Iruka sighs, his face softening with sympathy. I know you're worried about him, he says. I am, too. But there's nothing. Do you know what his brother did to him? Naruto interrupts, anger in his voice. He turns on his stool to look at the Chunin, slapping his chopsticks onto the countertop. Iruka's expression doesn't flinch. I saw him in the hospital, he says softly. Naruto's hands are shaking. It isn't enough, because those few bruises on Sasuke's skin don't come anywhere close to explaining what actually happened to him in that hotel. He was screaming, Naruto whispers, and the memory makes him see red. Sensei, he just started screaming. Naruto doesn't know how to explain it, doesn't know how to put into words how brutal it was, how horrifying it felt. Itachi Uchiha. He shakes his head, clenching his fists as he looks at his old teacher. What kind of person does something like that? Iruka-sensei's eyes are sad. I don't know, Naruto. Naruto remembers cold eyes and an indifferent expression, the sound of bone snapping. You're in the way. What he said to Sakura yesterday comes back to him. What was he like? Cold. Did you know him? Naruto asks. Itachi. Iruka shakes his head. Only by reputation. And he picked Sasuke up from the academy a few times. But I never actually met him. Naruto blinks in surprise. He did? Really? Naruto casts his mind back over 5 years, to sitting on that swing and watching his classmates with their families. But he doesn't recall who Sasuke walked home with. Naruto didn't start paying attention to him until after the massacre. He wonders what the two of them were like back then. Was Itachi always so cruel? Had there been a time when Sasuke loved him? Naruto stares down at the ramen in his bowl, twisting it around his chopsticks but never bringing them to his mouth. It's my fault, he admits. Your fault? Iruka repeats in surprise. What is? Sasuke? How could that possibly be your fault? They were after me, Naruto says. After what's inside me? That's why Sasuke came. To protect me from his brother. Alarm flashes across Iruka's face at the news that they were after the Kyuubi. They were after you. Naruto winces slightly, wondering if that was something he wasn't supposed to share. Oops. He says. Yes. Iruka struggles to collect himself. Okay, but that doesn't make it your fault. Even if Itachi hadn't been after you, Sasuke would have run after him anyway. It would have ended the same way. Naruto looks down at his food, finally slurping some of his noodles. It's probably the truth, but it doesn't make him feel any better. Stupid Sasuke, he thinks. Always saving me. Who does he think he is? You should listen to him, a familiar voice says. Naruto turns around. Kakashi stands slightly behind him. He's sporting his usual slumped posture, hands tucked deep into his pockets. Sasuke's one goal in life is to kill his brother, Kakashi continues, coming around to stand on Naruto's left. He leans his hip against the counter of the ramen stand. Maybe he did run after Itachi to protect you. But from what you described to me, Sasuke was running on blind rage. Even if you hadn't been there, he still would have attacked. Naruto looks down, remembers how Sasuke rushed into that hallway. Remembers the furious look he gave Naruto when he tried to help. Don't butt in. Mind your own business. Maybe Sasuke did run after Itachi to protect Naruto. But when he activated that Chidori, he was aiming to kill. Fighting to avenge, not to defend. I've waited my whole life for this day, this moment. This fight is mine. No. Sasuke wasn't fighting for Naruto. Not then. He was fighting to prove himself. Listen to your teacher, Kakashi says. It wasn't about you. Don't blame yourself. Naruto nods, recalling the way Sasuke kept getting up. Over and over again. Trying to make his brother look at him to see him. He thinks he gets it now. You're right, he says. It wasn't about me. Maybe it was at first, when Sasuke first charged after him. But that changed the moment he saw Itachi's face in that hallway. Naruto looks up at Kakashi, the memory still bright behind his eyes. We're doing something, right? He asks. We're going after him. We are not doing anything. Itachi came here to capture you. Now you want to go looking for him? You'd be handing yourself right over to the Akatsuki. It takes Naruto a moment to place the name. Right. That's who Itachi and that other guy said they worked for. Naruto won't lie and say it doesn't scare him. If the rest of these Akatsuki guys are as powerful as Itachi and his partner, then Naruto doesn't stand a chance. The thought terrifies him. But he has to do everything he can to help Sasuke. He can't let him keep suffering like this. Kakashi seems to remember that Iruka's sitting there, because his eye widens slightly, his posture straightening. You weren't really supposed to hear that, he laughs nervously, rubbing the back of his head. If you could just forget that last thing I said. It's fine, says Naruto. I already told him. You what? Naruto. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to. It's fine, Iruka-sensei says, raising his hands. I didn't hear anything. In fact, I just remembered I have somewhere to be. He reaches over to ruffle Naruto's hair. Hope you feel better, Naruto. He stands from the stool, leaving Naruto and Kakashi alone to speak freely. Naruto turns back to the Jounin, picking the conversation back up immediately. But what about Sasuke? If Itachi is the only one. Kakashi holds up a hand to silence him. That's why I'm here, he says. Tsunade-sama's sanctioned the mission to go after Itachi. I came to tell you I'm leaving. Naruto jolts in his chair at the news. You're going after him, really? He pushes himself eagerly from the stool. Let me go with you. Did you listen to nothing I just said? Kakashi asks. I'm not taking you right to the people who want to capture you. Use your brain, Naruto. Naruto feels indignant at the words. Hey, he yells. You're the one being stupid. Or did you forget how quickly Itaka took you out last time? Yeah, I heard about that. That's exactly my point, Kakashi responds, not missing a beat. This is already going to be extremely dangerous. If you came along, I'd have to worry about protecting you, and I can't have my focus split like that. You understand? Naruto clenches his teeth, because yes, he understands, and he hates that he does. He doesn't want Kakashi to be right. He wants to go with him. But as much as he wants to punch Itachi in the face, he's not stupid enough to believe he stands a chance against him. But apparently, neither does Kakashi. Naruto doesn't know the exact details of the fight, but apparently Itachi dropped him hard last time. Which was a shock to hear, because Kakashi-sensei's always seemed so powerful. But what about you, he asks. You can't go after him alone. He could kill you. Who said I was going alone? Naruto blinks, confused. Huh? But you just said. I said I didn't want you coming because I don't want to worry about protecting you. I never said I was going by myself. Jiraiya's agreed to come with me on this one. Pervy Sage, he exclaims in surprise. Amusement flickers through Kakashi's eye, and he nods. Recalling how quickly Itachi and Kisame fled once Jiraiya showed up, Naruto finds himself very reassured. He also recalls what Jiraiya said later about taking on Itachi and Kisame not without destroying myself, but that was when he was fighting alone. With Kakashi backing him up, surely the two of them would hold the advantage. Well, okay, if Pervy Sage is going with you. Itachi seemed pretty intimidated by him, because he left pretty fast once he showed up. But not before taking the time to give Sasuke a beating, Naruto thinks, anger surging just beneath his skin. Remembering the way Itachi turned to look at his brother, as Sasuke stood and faced him with blood-red eyes. This fight is mine, Sasuke had declared. Itachi had sighed, clearly only humoring him. Very well. Naruto turns his attention back to his sensei. You're leaving right now? Do you even know where he is? Kakashi hesitates before he answers. There have been reports of Kisame in Uegakure. Itachi hasn't been cited, but he's not as notorious as Kisame is. From what little we know of the Akatsuki, they seem to always travel in pairs. They've most likely moved on by now, but if they were there, it'll have been recent enough that my Ninken will be able to pick up their scent. Naruto takes in this information. He frowns as he recalls Pakun following Sasuke's scent through the forest. They can do that? Naruto asks. I thought they had to be familiar with a scent or something like that. They're familiar with Itachi's, Kakashi says shortly. Naruto opens his mouth, but the Jounin quickly holds up a hand, interrupting, No, I can't tell you how, don't ask me. Naruto huffs, crossing his arms, but he recognizes the tone of Kakashi's voice. It's the tone he gets when something is off limits, and no amount of prying is going to loosen his lips. Fine, fine. Have you told Sakura-chan? She's been worried about you a lot. I have, Kakashi replies. Just before I came here. His eye curves up in a smile. And don't worry, I'll be careful. Naruto feels himself flush in embarrassment at how easily the man saw through him. I said she was worried about you, not that I was. Of course, of course. Kakashi's visible eye is amused. Well, tell her, then. He gives Naruto a farewell wave, and then he's gone in a gust of wind and leaves. After saying goodbye to his students, an unconscious Sasuke included, Kakashi meets Jiraiya at the village entrance. Ready to go? The Sennin asks. Ready, Kakashi replies. And he is. He won't lie and say he's not apprehensive about confronting Itachi, especially so soon after last time. He still can't close his eyes without finding himself back in that red and white dreamscape, a sword being pushed into his gut, but after what he saw yesterday, his own fear is irrelevant. Seeing inside Sasuke's mind, witnessing the torture he's currently experiencing, it filled him with a cold resolve. That resolve fills him now, chasing away any reluctance he feels. Seeing Sasuke so vulnerable left him shaken. Over 12 hours later, the image of that helpless child still clings to his mind. Of that 7-year-old boy, curled up in a corner with his face buried in his knees. He's unable to forget it. He doubts he ever will. Jiraiya must see some of these thoughts reflected on his face, because the corner of his mouth pulls down. I know you're angry. And you have every right to be. But we can't rush onto this. You have to keep your head. Despite knowing Jiraiya is only being cautious, Kakashi can't help feeling as if the words are a slight to his skills as a ninja. He tries not to feel too offended. You don't have to worry, he says. I know how to keep my emotions separate from the mission. He wouldn't have lasted 10 years in Umbu if he didn't. I know you do, Jiraiya responds. I'm not contesting your capability. But I know how much you care about that kid. Kakashi looks at Jiraiya a bit sharply. It's an astute observation, considering how little interaction the two of them have had recently. Is it that obvious? Jiraiya's face becomes less serious, a hint of a smile curving his mouth. I don't see you care about much. It's hard not to notice when you do. Kakashi doesn't know how to respond to that. Instead, he turns away, back toward the gates. Let's get going. If we make haste, we should be able to make it to Iwagakuren too. Eternal rival. Kakashi and Jiraiya both freeze. Kakashi watches Jiraiya's face drop, even as he groans internally. Behind him, there's the sound of someone landing loudly on their feet. Maybe if I pretend he's not there, Kakashi thinks hopefully, then he'll go away. My soul is crying out. Guy yells passionately. For I was just given the most shocking of news. Tell me it isn't true. Kakashi sighs. Slowly, he turns to face Guy. He doesn't waste time playing head games with his rival, he wants to leave now, which means quickly powering through this unwanted conversation. If you're talking about me going after Itachi, then yes. It's true. And I'm in quite a hurry, Guy. But you can't. Guy protests. Before you still haven't completely recovered. Jiraiya cuts him a sharp look when he hears this, and Kakashi grinds his teeth, resisting the urge to glare at the green-clad man. I'm fine. And I've got Jiraiya with me. How did you even find out? I went to see Lee at the hospital. Guy explains. Your student was there visiting him, and she told me when I asked about you. Since you didn't tell me. Kakashi sighs. Sakura. He resists the urge to pinch the bridge of his nose. Look, Guy, he attempts to explain. I would have told you. But I knew you would only try to stop me. You can bet I would have. And I have to do this, he says. He looks Guy in the eyes, allows him to see the resolve in his gaze. I have to do everything in my power to wake him up. I know you can understand that. Guy watches him, slightly more subdued than before. At least allow me to come with you, he says. Jiraiya shakes his head before Kakashi can refuse him. Absolutely not, he says. We're going for subtlety here. I can be subtle. Guy yells. Jiraiya raises his eyebrows, as if to say, case in point. Kakashi sighs. I need you here, he says. I need you to look after my students while I'm gone. Guy doesn't like it. It's obvious he doesn't like it. But with a reluctant sigh, he acquiesces. Fine. But I'm still irritated you didn't tell me. Great, says Jiraiya, voice laden with sarcasm. Can we head out, now? Yeah, Kakashi replies, we can head out. He turns toward the gate, then looks at Guy one last time before he crosses through it with the sun in. I'll see you soon, Guy. Guy looks at him, uncharacteristically serious. Be careful, Kakashi. Kakashi's eye curves up in an expression meant to be reassuring. I always am. As he and Jiraiya both use a shunshin to flicker away, Kakashi hears Guy's last words, carried to him on the wind. The man's voice is heavy with worry. If only that were true. Chapter 13. We should wait until the girl leaves, Kidomaru says. We can sneak in and grab Sasuke then. Teiwa feels a burst of irritation toward her teammate. Her hands tighten on the rail in front of her, staring down at the hospital window below them. Inside, a pink-haired Kunoichi is sitting by Sasuke Uchiha's bedside. She's just some stupid girl, she snaps. Even Jirobo could take her out. Thanks, Jirobo says in his deep voice. Then he seems to realize he's being insulted, because he scowls. Hey. Orochimaru-sama said no witnesses, Kodomaru reminds her. His tone is a shade disapproving, and Teiwa feels her temper flare in response. I know that, shithead, she snarls. But the damn bitch isn't moving. We'll be sitting here all day if we wait for her to leave. Teiwa, Jirobo says with a frown, drawing her name out slowly. Women really shouldn't use words like that. Especially to describe other women. Teiwa snaps her teeth, not looking at him. Shut up, fat ass. Beside her, a familiar laugh rings out. Either Seikon or Yukon. She can never tell which, their laughs sound exactly the same. But Jirobo, one of them says, and she can tell that it's Seikon now by the condescending tone. That would imply that Teiwa is an actual girl, which we all know she's never been. Teiwa sees red. She snaps her head toward her conjoined teammate, her eyes flashing. Shut up, you piece of shit. He just cackles, and she whips her head away, her bottom lip curling. Sometimes, Teiwa wonders if she's the only one of her teammates with an actual working brain. Her and Kimimaro, of course, but his death is quickly approaching. Yukon and Seikon have already started calling them the Sound 4 instead of the Sound 5. Teiwa's right, Seikon tells Kodomaru. Let's just kill the girl and grab the Uchiha brat. I can do it myself. Yukon's running low on patience, and you know how he can get. Teiwa looks over her shoulder at the other half of Seikon's body. But Yukon's face is tilted down, shadowed completely by his hair. Besides, Seikon continues, and his turquoise lips curve into a smile, I'm the leader, so all of you have to do what I say. Teiwa feels indignant anger burst inside her at the claim. What? You're the leader? When the fuck did we make that decision, because I definitely wasn't there. Kimimaro is dying, Seikon says. He has weeks left, maybe less. It falls to the strongest of us to take his place. And you think you're the strongest? It certainly isn't you, he replies, lips twisting. Don't tell me you've forgotten the way I shoved your face into the dirt inside that gladiator ring. Teiwa feels herself flush with a combination of anger and humiliation. Shut your mouth. I'll cut out your fucking tongue. She will never forget the shame of that moment surrounded by the dozens of other prisoners as Seikon pressed her face against the ground. The gravel had been rough against her face, and she had choked on the dirt in her mouth. Seikon's breath had been hot against her ear as he had pinned her body beneath his, whispering, I win. Orochimaru-sama saved her from that hell. She gave up everything to leave that place behind and gain the power he promised her, even her own freedom. If Sasuke Uchiha is smart, he'll do the same. Both of you be quiet, Kodomaru says, casting them a chiding glance. Security is lax, not non-existent. You'll give us away. All the more reason why we should just grab the kid and go, she snaps. Kill the girl, knock her out, it doesn't matter. We've been standing here way too goddamned long. I agree with them, Kodomaru, Jirobo tells him. Let's just kill the girl, grab the kid, and get out of here. Kodomaru's lips become thin, but Teiwa sees the moment he reluctantly acquiesces. Fine. But we'll wait a few more minutes. It looks like she might be leaving. Sakura holds Sasuke's hand as she sits next to him. In the week that he's been here, he hasn't moved at all, and Sakura's heart breaks every time she looks at him. She doesn't know how long she's been here, but it's long enough that her throat has begun to tire from speaking for so long. Her muscles begin to cramp, and her grip on Sasuke's hand grows uncomfortable and sweaty. Her parents are probably looking for her. Still, she's reluctant to leave. She doesn't want to leave him alone. She knows that it's silly and childish. That there's no way he can know that she's there. But it's comforting to her to imagine that he does know, that somewhere beneath the genjutsu, he can sense her presence. Maybe he's clinging to her voice right now, struggling to drag himself out. It's a foolish hope, but it keeps her talking to him, even after she's run out of things to say. And Kakashi-sensei left this morning, she continues to speak to him. Though he told me he came to see you, so I guess you already knew that. She stares down at her thumb against the back of his hand. Her hand fits in his so easily, as if it's meant to be there. For some reason, this thought causes her to blink back tears. She moves her gaze from their hands to his face. Her eyes trace his features, lingering on his closed eyelids. There's a small scar on his upper lip, a faint line that looks years old. She wonders how she didn't notice it until now. What's it from? She wonders, resisting the urge to reach over and trace it with her finger. She wishes more than anything that she could ask him. It's just a small scar, completely inconsequential, but to her it's just a reminder that she hardly knows anything about him. That she never made any effort to try. And now, she might never get the chance. Don't think like that, she chides herself, forcing away the sharp spike of fear in her chest. Kakashi-sensei's going to find Itachi. He's going to fix this. He promised. Sakura sighs and reluctantly pulls her hand away. She stands from the chair, her muscles slightly sore from not moving for so long. She stares down at Sasuke for one last moment and wonders what he's seeing, wonders what horrors his brother's genjutsu are showing him. We're going to wake you up, Sasuke-kun, she says. Just hold on a little longer. She struggles to pull away, to take those final steps out of the room. A sudden knock causes her to finally pull her gaze away from Sasuke, turning it to the door. Ino, Sakura says. She quickly gets over her surprise, moving closer to Sasuke's side and grabbing his hand again. Her eyes narrow. What are you doing here? Ino steps into the room cautiously. She looks as pretty as she always does, which serves to irritate Sakura. She knows how worn and tired she must look in comparison. It makes her hate Ino more than she already does. Sakura's world is falling apart, and Ino still looks perfect. How is Sasuke-kun? She asks. Asuma-sensei told us he's in a coma. Is it true that there's nothing being done? Sakura feels her heart constrict painfully. She tightens her grip on Sasuke's hand possessively, her gaze steely. Do you care? She knows she's being a bit unfair. Ino did ask her about Sasuke a few days ago, and she sounded genuinely worried. She sounds worried now, too. But she also looks so unaffected. She's perfectly put together where Sakura is falling apart, and it makes Sakura feel weak. It makes her feel like she's losing. After their match during the preliminaries, she thought she was done losing to Ino. She thought she was done feeling lesser than her. Of course I care. Ino yells. Her expression twists into something more familiar as she glares. You're not the only one who cares about Sasuke-kun, forward girl. Sakura feels herself go red. Shut up, Ino pig, she snaps. It's so easy to fall back into their old pattern. As if their match during the Chunin exams never happened. It's been over a week. And you're only coming to see him now. Ino opens her mouth to snipe back at her, but then she pauses. Something flickers in her eyes, and she sighs, the fight seeming to drain out of her. Can we not fight, please, she asks. That's not what I came here for. Her voice sounds suddenly tired. Sakura pauses, watching her face. Her expression seems sincere, but Sakura isn't sure if she can believe her. It's been so long since she and Ino talked civilly. She presses her lips together tightly. Fine, she agrees, her expression cautious. What did you come here for, then? Ino hesitates. There's an unsureness to her that's at odds with her usual personality. The hospital window shatters. Sakura shrieks in surprise, ducking down and protecting her head with her arms. She slams her eyes closed, feeling shards of glass cut into her skin. What the fuck, you moron, a female voice yells. You're going to bring the guards right to us. It wasn't me, it was Yukon. I warned you he was getting impatient. Sakura blinks spots from her vision. She's on the ground, glass all around her, and her mind spins, trying to process what happened in the last couple of seconds. She tries to push herself up, but the glass slices into her palm, sharp pain shooting through her arm. There are 4 people in front of her, who just smashed through the window. They look older than her by a few years, Sakura doesn't recognize any of them. So much for being inconspicuous, one of them says. The one with dark skin. Orochimaru-sama isn't going to be pleased. Orochimaru. The name startles her, and that's when she notices the Hittite one of them is wearing. Otagakur. Their sound ninja. Sakura feels fear shoot through her. She looks behind her immediately, realizing their target. Suzuki-kun. Do. One of her ribs snaps sharply, and she's propelled into the air by an invisible force. Sakura gasps, her vision going white. She chokes on the cry that tries to leave her mouth. Sakura. The voice is Ino's, but Sakura can't respond. The pain is sharper than anything she's ever felt, and it narrows the world down so that it's the only thing that exists. Ray. Again, she feels bone snap, the world spinning. Her lips are wet, and she chokes on blood. Me. She slams into the ground as a third rib breaks, and she huddles there, curled in on herself. Her chest is on fire, and there's blood forcing its way up her throat, and each time she coughs her vision goes dark around the edges. For a moment, she blacks out. Only for a few seconds. The agony pulls her quickly back. One of the sound ninjas is standing in front of her. His turquoise lips are quilted in a sadist smirk. Terror explodes in her gut, but she forces herself to breathe through it. She can't move. Trying makes her vision go dim. But desperation burns in her chest, stronger than the agonizing pain, and she drags herself across the floor. Blood dribbles past her lips. Your bones play a lovely tune, the blue-haired sound ninja says, but the words distort in Sakura's ears. She grabs the sheet of the hospital bed. Her chest is on fire, she can barely breathe, and her vision keeps going black. But she pulls herself in front of Suzuki anyway, shielding him. You're not going to take him, she thinks desperately. The metal frame bites into her back. I won't let you take him. With a playful smirk, the blue-haired ninja kicks at her knees. Sakura falls, but she grabs Suzuki's arm, her nails digging into his skin. She blacks out again, the word spinning, but she clings to his arm and anchors herself back. She shakes as she struggles not to collapse, weak, pathetic, useless, but she puts her body in front of his and refuses to move. I won't let you take him. Oh, for fuck's sake, the female voice yells. Just kill her already. Stop playing around, you shithead. The sound ninja in front of her smirks. You're right, Teiwa. She's too weak to have any fun with, anyway. A hand reaches down. She's yanked into the air by the front of her shirt, away from Suzuki. Her ribs are jostled, and her vision goes dark. A pain shoots through her, sharper than before, and she gasps. Don't touch her. The voice is familiar, and Sakura knows she should know who it is. But pain sends her mind quickly falling into darkness. Ino knows it will leave her body defenseless. She knows if she does it, she'll be killed the second they notice what she's doing. She doesn't care. Seeing Sakura about to die ignites in her a fury she didn't know she possessed. Shinten no Jutsu. Fighting through the webs trapping her arms, she brings her thumbs and 2 forefingers together, focusing on the female ninja behind Sakura's attacker. She leaves her own body behind, catapulted into someone else's. Transferring minds with someone else can be disorienting, but Ino doesn't hesitate to move. Using hands that aren't her own, she grabs the back of the ninja holding Sakura. Gross, Ino thinks. Is that another head? On one body? The blue-haired ninja drops Sakura in surprise. Hey. Teiwa. Ino throws him over her shoulder, then delivers a solid kick that sends him flying through the broken window. Seikon, one of the others yells. The chubby one. He pins his gaze on his female teammate accusingly. Teiwa. What the hell? She's a Yamanaka, the other one yells. He spins around, a kunai suddenly in his hand, and he spins for Ino's prone body, aiming for the throat. Ino panics. She releases Teiwa from her mind transfer jutsu. Inside her own body again, she jerks her own head up wildly, but she's defenseless to do anything against the strike. She stares as the kunai comes down, her own heartbeat roaring in her ears. 1,000 memories flash through her mind in the space of a single second. Sakura. I'm sorry. A green blur comes out of nowhere. Ino blinks, and suddenly her attacker is on the ground, his neck twisted at an impossible angle. She stares at him with wide eyes, then lifts her gaze to her rescuer. "Fear not," Might Guy says. He strikes a fierce pose that would be comical if Ino wasn't so stunned. "Konoha's blue beast has arrived to protect you." Ino struggles to catch her breath, her eyes darting back to the body on the ground. The two sound ninja remaining stare at their fallen comrade in shock. "You bastard," the female yells. Her face contorts with rage. She throws herself at Guy recklessly, eyes burning, but her heavier companion catches her around the waist, easily restraining her. "Teiwa! Teiwa, stop. We have to go." "He killed Kodomaru," she screeches, struggling desperately to free herself from his arms. "I'll kill him. I'll fucking kill him. Do you know who he is? We have to go now. Fuck you, you worthless piece of shit." With one last look at Sasuke's unconscious form, and a heartbroken look at the body of his comrade, the heavy-set Otonin wraps his arms tighter around his screaming comrade, then drags her through the window. Ino can still hear her screams after they're gone. She lets herself breathe, her body slumping in relief. "I'm alive," she realizes, and she feels like collapsing. The relief is short-lived. "Sakura," she remembers not even a second later. Panic fills her chest, and she rushes to her rival's side, falling to her knees. "Guy-sensei," she calls, but the green-clad man is already there, scooping Sakura up into his arms. She doesn't stir. Fear clogs Ino's throat. Is she? Will she? Guy looks down at the pink-haired girl in his arms, frowning. "She will be fine," he says, after what seems to Ino like forever. "Nothing Tsunade-sama cannot fix, but I must get her to her immediately." Ino nods. She has 1,000 questions, but the sight of Sakura looking so crumpled makes all of them flee her mind at once. She blinks tears from her eyes. Guy looks down at her thoughtfully. After a moment, he settles a hand on her shoulder. "You did good here," he says, unusually subdued. "I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner." Ino shakes her head, remembering the way Sakura fought through her pain to drag herself in front of Sasuke, defending him to what she thought was her last breath. Her throat burns. "I didn't do anything," she says. "This won't happen again," Guy promises. "There will be ombu posted by all of the entrances. Someone will be by to clean up this mess." "Are you unhurt?" "I'm fine," Ino answers. She's shaken, and she can't get her hands to stop trembling, but aside from a few scrapes, she hasn't been harmed. "I'll stay here until then." Guy leaves with Sakura through the broken window. Ino collapses in the chair by Sasuke's bed. There's a dead body 3 feet away from her, and she can't stop herself from glancing at it. She remembers the blue-haired ninja she tosses out the window, and she presses a hand over her mouth. Is he dead? She wonders, and fights the urge to be sick. Did I kill him? I've never killed anyone before. She buries her face in her hands, her entire body shaking. She's still sitting like that when Asuma-sensei finds her 20 minutes later. Chapter 14. Sakura Haruno has 3 cracked ribs and a punctured aorta. Tsunade spends 2 hours kneeling by the girl's side, painstakingly healing the damage. When she's finished, the feel of blood on her hands causes her chest to tighten in panic. Her breathing becomes short. She shoves her shaking hands under the faucet, struggling to banish the memory of her palms pushing against Dan's chest, his life slipping away beneath her hands. Disgust at her own weakness surges within her. What kind of medic falls apart at the sight of blood? This is why she left. This is why she ran. She was afraid of the ghosts she had left behind her. Dan. Now Aki. Orochimaru. She pulls herself together, drying her hands and forcing them to stop trembling. She shuts it down and locks it away, donning the face of a Hokage as she exits the hospital's restroom. Sasuke Uchiha's room is just down the hall from where Sakura has been placed. When Tsunade enters, Guy is leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. He's frowning down at the blood and glass on the floor, his expression troubled. "Did you talk with Sakura's parents?" Tsunade asks. Guy pulls his gaze around to look at her. The shoulder of his green jumpsuit is stained red. "Yes, they're with her now. I also talked with Ino about what happened before I arrived. She said that the attackers were trying to capture Sasuke, not kill him." Tsunade's lips thinned. Orochimaru. Guy nods, his face grim. Yes. She said one of them mentioned his name. Tsunade grits her teeth. Her nails bite into her skin. Stupid, she berates herself. I should have placed a guard on him. She knew about Orochimaru's interest in the boy. She knew about the curse mark and the kidnapping attempt by Kabuto Yakushi. She was briefed on the situation when she was inaugurated as Hokage. She should have predicted that the Sound would make another attempt. She should have put safety measures in place. But she didn't. She didn't, and 2 children nearly died because of it. How is Ino? She asks him. You're sure she wasn't hurt? He shakes his head. No, nothing beyond a few scratches. She seemed alright when I spoke to her. A bit shaken up, but mostly just worried about her friend. Asuma is with her. Tsunade nods, relief allowing the knot in her chest to loosen. She'll have to pay Asuma a visit later. He no doubt has questions about what caused his student to nearly get killed. Guy sighs heavily, looking toward Sasuke on the bed. He was completely undisturbed by the earlier attack. Tsunade doesn't think she's ever seen a genjutsu so powerful. I should have been quicker to arrive, the taijutsu expert says, his jaw clenched. What am I going to tell Kakashi? Now 2 of his students are in the hospital. I promised to watch out for them while he was gone. Guy's eyes are practically flaming with self-recrimination. Tsunade purses her lips. You did watch out for them. If you hadn't been there, Sakura and Ino would have been killed, and Sasuke would be halfway to Otagakure by now. It's my fault. I should have placed this room under watch. She presses her lips together, still kicking herself. Her eyes move over the room, and she grimaces at the broken window. Her gaze falls to the floor littered with shards of glass, lingering on the smears of blood on the white tile. I'm having Sasuke moved to a different room, she decides. And I'm posting Forumbu at his door at all times. Something like this will not happen again. Guy nods. I'll watch over him, too. Kakashi asked me to, and I'm here with Lee most days, anyway. Memory sparks at the young boy's name. A young genin laid up in the hospital a floor down, fighting against his own broken body. About Lee, she says, and Guy looks at her with a spark in his eyes. I've been exploring more options for his surgery. I believe I might have found a way to increase his chances. Guy straightens, his slumped posture disappearing. Really? Not by much, she warns him, before he can get too excited. There's still going to be a big risk involved. But I think I may be able to give him more than a 50-50 chance of survival. Any improvement is enough. Guy proclaims. Oh, to know that Lee might still get the chance to continue in his springtime of youth. It is wonderful news. Thank you. Tsunade rolls her eyes, but her lips quirk slightly. You're welcome. I'll keep you updated on any progress I make. She leaves before he can start making her ears ring. When Sakura wakes up a few hours later, Ino is sitting at her bedside. Bright light assaults her eyes, and her head spins. She blinks her eyes rapidly, staring at the slumped girl in the chair. Her thoughts are so hazy and confused, it takes her a moment to make sense of what she's seeing. Ino, she questions, her eyebrows furrowed. Ino's head snaps up, her body straightening out of its slump. Sakura, she says, her eyes flooding with relief. You're awake. Sakura blinks, pushing herself up into a sitting position. Then suddenly there are a pair of arms around her neck, a body pressed against hers. Sakura's eyes go wide in surprise. Ino's hair gets in her mouth. Ino's hugging me, Sakura registers, frozen in place as her mind struggles to catch up. Why is Ino hugging me? Ino pulls back quickly, looking almost embarrassed by the display. Sorry, she says. I'm glad you're okay. Sakura stares at her, then begins to take in her surroundings. She's sitting on a hospital bed, but she doesn't feel hurt. Slowly, previous events catch up to her. Sasuke-kun, she exclaims, once she remembers. Her eyes go wide, her heart rate picking up. Is he? He's fine, Ino assures her. Guy-sensei got there just in time. He saved us. They're moving Suzuki-kun to a new room. I think I heard Godame-sama say something about guards. Sakura remembers how to breathe. She presses her hand to her chest, recalling the terror that filled her as she crawled across the floor, dragging herself in front of Suzuki. She recalls the taste of blood in her mouth, choking her. The sharp snap of her ribs. She shudders, a wave of fear crashing over her. I nearly died. Sakura's been close to death before. The land of waves. The forest of death. Gaara. But for some reason, this time it really hits her. She's never felt more aware of how fragile she is. How easily her bones can break, her life can slip away. The beat of her heart is steady beneath her palm. She holds her hand there, allowing it to reassure her. Are you okay? Ino asks. Her expression is creased in worry. You look really pale. Should I get a nurse? Sakura shakes her head. No, I'm okay. She remembers Ino, calling out to her just before she fell unconscious, and she frowns. Are you okay? They didn't hurt you, did they? I'm okay. Sakura nods, reassured. Her chest feels slightly sore, but she doesn't seem to be injured anymore. Tsunade-sama must have healed her. Do my parents know? She asks. They were here earlier. I saw Tsunade-sama talking to them in the hallway, but I don't think they're here anymore. Sakura processes this, and decides she should probably go looking for them. Despite her close encounters with death, she's never been injured like this before. They were probably terrified when they heard. A lot of the time, Sakura feels guilty for neglecting her parents so much. But they don't understand what shinobi life is like. They don't understand her. I'm glad you're alright, Ino says. I was so scared for you. Sakura looks at her in surprise. You were. Ino nods, and Sakura sees a glimpse of her old friend reflected in her eyes. The one who pushed her bangs back and taught her not to hide behind them. I missed you, she admits quietly. That's why I was at the hospital. I wanted to see you. I wanted to try and be friends again. Sakura stares at her in surprise, her lips parting silently. She doesn't know what to say. It wasn't too long ago that she and Ino left their friendship behind, but it feels like a lifetime. She never expected that Ino might ever wish to rekindle it. She never considered that, deep down, Ino might feel the same way that she does. But what about Suzuki-kun, she asks. Ino straightens confidently, and she looks more like herself. He's still going to be mine, of course. But I don't see why that should have anything to do with us. Sakura's first instinct is to snap back at her. Suzuki will be hers, not Ino's. He's barely ever even spoken to her. But she bites her tongue, holding the sharp words behind her teeth. Because she does miss Ino. She misses talking about boys with her, and braiding flowers into each other's hair. She misses sleepovers, and laughter, and the reassurance of knowing she has someone standing beside her. She misses her friend. She has Naruto and Suzuki, but it isn't the same. I think I'd like that, she says softly. Ino smiles. She leans forward to hug Sakura again. This time, Sakura hugs her back. But Suzuki-kun's definitely mine, not yours, she can't resist adding. Ino pulls back quickly, her face twisting in a familiar expression of anger. He is not. Just because you're on the same team as him now doesn't mean. There's a loud bang as the door is thrown open. Naruto stands there, his blue eyes wide. He looks as though he's been running. Sakura, he yells. There you are. Not much, Naruto. Ino says, scowling. Naruto ignores her. I heard you were attacked by Sound Ninja. Is it true they were after Suzuki? Are you okay? She and Ino share a look. Ino sighs. I'll just go now, she says. Asuma-sensei is probably looking for me. I'll see if I can find your parents to tell them you're up. She slips out the door behind Naruto. Sakura turns her attention to her teammate. I'm okay, Naruto, she says. Tsunade-sama healed me. What happened? I heard Koji and Shikamaru talking. They said you and Ino were almost killed. Sakura winces. It was Orochimaru. He sent a group of ninja to kidnap Sasuke-kun. Naruto blinks. Orochimaru. Anger flashes across his face at the mention of the man who killed the Sandaime. What does he want with Sasuke? Realization hits Sakura, and her eyes widen. He doesn't know, she realizes. Sasuke made her promise not to tell him about the mark on his neck, but Sakura assumed that Kakashi must have told Naruto at some point. She wrestles with herself for a moment, unsure of what to do. She made Sasuke a promise. But Naruto deserved to know. Sakura sighs. Let's take a walk, okay? There's something that you should probably know about. Orochimaru did what? Sakura winces at Naruto's volume, as several people on the streets turn their heads to look at them. She waits until they turn away to respond. Gave him a curse mark, she repeats, casting him a careful look. Keep your voice down. I don't think anyone is supposed to know about it. You did, Naruto says, shaking his head. His teeth are clenched. Kakashi-sensei did. I only know because I was there when it happened, Sakura tells him. I saw. Sakura trails off, remembering that horrible moment in the Forest of Death. She has nightmares about that day, about Sasuke's body covered in black markings, a cruel smile on his lips as he snapped the sound ninja's arms. She shudders and forces the memory away. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't Sasuke. I saw it, she repeats. I don't know how Kakashi-sensei found out. He just seemed to know. Sasuke-kun didn't want anyone else to know. He asked me not to tell you. Sakura shifts as she remembers her promise, feeling guilty. She knows that telling Naruto about the mark is probably the right thing to do, but she hates that she's betraying Sasuke-kun's trust. Please don't be angry when you wake up, she pleads. Naruto huffs. His blue eyes are bright with annoyance. That bastard. We're supposed to be a team, Dadabia. We can't be keeping secrets. He cuts himself off abruptly, a strange emotion flickering across his face. He looks almost abashed by his words, followed by an expression of extreme discomfort. What? Sakura asks. Nothing, he says quickly. He runs the back of his head and smiles nervously. I mean, I guess secrets aren't always bad. We need secrets. Secrets are good sometimes, yeah no. Sakura frowns at him for a long moment. Naruto fidgets as they walk down the street, refusing to meet her eyes. You're being weird, she tells him. No I'm not. What's with this curse mark thing, anyway? Why Sasuke? What's Orochimaru want with him? Sakura easily recognizes the words as the change of subject they're meant to be, but she allows it. Whatever Naruto's being so strange about is probably something stupid, anyway. I don't know. He said that Sasuke-kun would come looking for him in search of power. Naruto frowns for a moment, then shakes his head. No way. Sasuke would never do that. He's already really powerful. Sakura swallows, and thinks about Sasuke in the Forest of Death. She thinks about black marks decorating his skin, about the cruel smile pulling at his lips as he snapped that sound ninja's arms. Yeah, she says, and tries to sound like she believes it as much as he does. Of course he wouldn't. Orochimaru must see that now, she tries to convince herself. Otherwise he wouldn't be trying to kidnap him. The both of them are silent for a few moments as they walk. The day is bleeding into evening. She should really go see her parents and make sure they know she's okay. They're probably worrying themselves sick. It's getting a bit late, she says. What are you going to do now? Naruto shrugs. I don't know. Go home, I guess. Iruka-sensei's been too busy to hang out today. And Pervy Sage and Kakashi-sensei are both gone, so. Sakura watches him, and something about his face feels wrong. He's smiling widely, like he always does, but the look in his eyes doesn't match. They aren't as bright as they normally are. It hits her, quite suddenly, how lonely he must be. Naruto, Sakura says hesitantly. I was going to go home to have dinner with my parents. Did you, maybe want to come with me? He stares at her, his face dumbfounded. And it makes her even sadder, because he shouldn't look so surprised by someone asking him over for dinner. Really, he asks, eyes wide. Really, she affirms. And Naruto's answering smile is brighter than the sun. Chapter 15. 55%. Tsunade stares down at the papers of research in front of her, the end of her pen held between her teeth. She frowns down at the calculations that she's marked in red. 55% chance of survival. That's only an increase of 5%. If Lee chooses to undergo this operation, then he still has a 45% chance of dying. Not good enough. I can do better. Her teeth bite down harder on the end of her pen. Leaning forward, her eyes zero in on some of the newer calculations she's made up. If the problem lies in Lee's body not being strong enough to hold up during the procedure. The sound of the door opening interrupts her concentration. Her head snaps up, prepared to snap at whoever it is for entering without an invitation, and then she freezes, her pen still in her mouth. Danzo, she says in surprise, pulling the pen back from her mouth. Tsunade, the man responds, leaning heavily on his cane. I see that chair is treating you well. A frown pulls at her lips. She knows that Danzo has been a long-time campaigner for the Hokage seat, and she doesn't appreciate the undercurrent she hears in his voice. She watches him warily. She knows he was an honored friend to her sensei and to her great-uncle. But she doesn't trust him. She never has. Was there something you needed? She asks. Danzo turns, walking steadily toward the window. He braces his hands on the windowsill, looking out over the village. You can say that. He doesn't look at her when he speaks. Tsunade feels herself bristle at his complete lack of respect. I'm concerned about the recent mission you sanctioned, he says. The capture and retrieval of Itachi Uchiha. Tsunade tenses very slightly. She doesn't know how he's obtained this information so fast, but she doesn't like it. Especially since she's been trying to keep quiet about it. Something that she's learned since taking up the position of Hokage is that the elders are notorious busybodies. They just don't know when to keep their noses out. I don't believe that's any of your business, she tells him. Her voice skates thinly on the line of still being polite. He turns from the window to face her. Itachi Uchiha is one of the most dangerous shinobi that Konoha has ever produced. The decision to try to bring him in alive is a foolish one. Tsunade's irritation grows at the way he speaks as if he is the one in the room with the power, not her. Her jaw tightens. You must have heard about Sasuke Uchiha's condition, she says. Attempting to capture Itachi is a risk, but it's our only option. I won't stand by and watch an innocent child suffer. Danzo's expression doesn't change. There isn't so much as a flicker in his eye. Sasuke's situation is unfortunate. But his life is not worth the lives of two of our most valuable resources. Tsunade's mouth twists slightly, imagining how Jiraiya would react to being referred to as such. Those resources volunteered for the mission themselves. Why are you so certain they will fail? She will not lie and say that she has not feared the same, that Kakashi and Jiraiya will be killed, and that she'll have to send out a member of Umbu to dispose of their bodies. But fear can oftentimes be irrational, and she knows how powerful Jiraiya is. An attack may have a leg up on Kakashi, but she knows that his strength is nothing to scoff at, either. He's one of the best Jounin Konoha has. They will succeed in this. If she didn't believe that, then she never would have agreed to send them out. If the mission succeeds, Danzo says, ignoring her question, then what will you do with him, after he wakes his brother? Kill him. He's a member of the Akatsuki, Tsunade responds. The information he carries is invaluable. Killing him would be an utter waste of resources. It's a risk, of course. Keeping an enemy alive, instead of executing them at the earliest opportunity, always is. But war is steadily approaching them, and their enemy is an organization that is nearly completely unknown. They need all the information they can get. Danzo's eye narrows, his gaze sharp. Do not be a fool, Tsunade. He's not going to give you anything. He'll be interrogated by T&I, she says firmly. He'll cough up every shred of intel he has, or someone will dig into his mind and rip it out. And they won't bother to be gentle when doing it. You forget, Itachi was Umbu. They are trained to resist such methods of interrogation. Everyone breaks, if you apply the right pressure. Even Itachi Uchiha. Danzo's mouth becomes slanted, the expression pulling at the X-shaped scar on his chin. You're playing a dangerous game, Tsunade. I hope you're prepared to deal with the fallout. Tsunade narrows her eyes dangerously. Meaning? Simply that you're known for losing most of your gambles. He turns around abruptly, walking back over to the door. Be wary of the threads you choose to pull. You might just spell Konoha's destruction. With those parting words, he pulls the door open and exits the way he came. Tsunade is left staring at the place where he was standing, something dark and suspicious curling in her gut. What are you up to? She wonders, her eyebrows furrowed. How does Itachi Uchiha fit into this for you? She sits there thinking about it for a long time. She's left with a dozen half-formed questions, and not a single answer for any of them. It doesn't take Itachi long to realize they're being followed. Kisame doesn't notice. He's too busy keeping up a steady stream of chatter about the bounty mission they've just completed. Itachi tunes him out, his senses honing in on the chakra signatures tailing them. He can't tell if they're familiar or not. They're keeping a distance of at least a quarter mile, and Itachi isn't a sensory type, he can't sense them well enough from this far away. Their chakra is only the slightest brush against his awareness. Stop, Itachi says, his mouth pulling into a frown. Kisame halts immediately, in both his movements and his speech. He looks at Itachi in question. What? We've picked up a tail. Kisame frowns. He turns to look over his right shoulder. I don't sense anyone. Maybe you would if you learned the importance of stilling your tongue. His partner casts him a look of mild offense. Rude. Do you recognize who they are? Itachi stretches his senses out as far as they go, trying to get a better read on them. But it's no use, their chakra brushes against his mind like a static shock, purposefully muted. He can't glean anything from it. No, they're too far away. He presses his lips into a thin line. You go deliver our package to the Tsuchikage. I'll go investigate. The package Itachi is speaking of is the powerful Nukenin the Akatsuki is being charged by Iwagakuer to capture. He's currently unconscious, thrown carelessly over Kisame's sword. Kisame looks displeased by Itachi's proposal. By yourself. We need to complete our mission quickly, before Leader Sama contacts us again, Itachi reminds him. And you'll draw too much attention. If you come with me, we'll just end up in a fight. Kisame bares his teeth in a shark-like grin. And that's a bad thing. It's unnecessary. I'm not in the mood to indulge your whims. You rarely are. His partner sighs, hefting Same Hada higher on his shoulder as their package threatens to slip off the end. Well, alright, deal with them then. I'll go on ahead and collect the bounty. Kisame leaves. Itachi stretches his senses out again, latching onto the two distant chakra signatures. He debates sending out a crow to scout them first, but decides that would take too long. Pain is expecting them soon. He pulls his chakra tightly around himself, making his own signature as small as possible, and he manipulates some of the chakra at his feet, making his footsteps soundless. It's not true cloaking, but it's the closest that a ninja can manage without a seal. The thick forest he's in provides him with excellent cover. The chakra signatures are still about 500 yards away. It appears that they have stopped briefly. Resting? Itachi wonders. If they are, then that implies that they've been following him and Kisame for quite a while. And I only just noticed them. Whoever they are, they're skilled. Highly trained in the art of stealth. Even now, their presence is difficult to sense. He hears them before he sees them. Their voices are quiet, but they still carry through the trees. Need a game plan. Attacking both of them at once is suicide. This entire mission is suicide. Itachi tenses at the voices. One of them is much more familiar than the other, but he recognizes both of them immediately. Kakashi. And Jiraiya. Itachi tightens his jaw, reassessing his options. He wasn't expecting one of the Sunin. He doesn't move out any further, just presses himself against the trunk of a tree. He listens to their conversation, hoping it might reveal what they're doing out here. If they came on some fool's errand to capture him, then he can just shake them off his tail without confronting them. Still, he can't make sense of why they would even try it. He already took Kakashi down once. Why risk it? And why would the elders let them risk it? They would never want him captured, not when it would be so easy for him to reveal all their secrets. One who agreed to come along, Kakashi is saying. His voice is less than 5 yards away. Don't tell me you're backing out now. Of course not. You think I'm scared of some teenage brat? It takes Itachi a second to realize that the words are referring to him. He wonders if he should feel offended. That teenage brat is also an S-rank criminal who slaughtered one of the most powerful clans single-handedly. Semantics, the Toad Sennin replies. After a pause, he sighs. All right, I get it. Don't look at me like that. I was the one who warned you to be careful, remember? I want to help Sasuke as much as you do. Itachi startles slightly, reacting without meaning to. The ironclad control he has over his chakra slips for the briefest moment, and he quickly clamps back down on it, praying neither of them noticed the slight flare. He hasn't thought about Sasuke since he left him behind at that hotel 10 days ago. Hasn't thought about Sasuke because he can't think about Sasuke, because that road leads straight down a proverbial rabbit hole he can't let himself fall into. He flexes his fingers at his side, caught in the memory of fist against bone. The feeling of it ghosts across his knuckles. A sharp snap skin beneath his fingernails. He bites hard on his tongue, and the pain causes the memory to dissipate. His focus sharpens. What does Sasuke have to do with this? I know how dangerous this is, Kakashi says. Trust me, I know what he's capable of. I felt it. But right now, he's Sasuke's only hope. Without Itachi, he might never wake up. The words slam into him like a sledgehammer. Never wake up? Alarm shoots through him. Surely his brother has woken up by now? Tsukuyomi is a vicious technique, merciless in the way it tears through its victims' minds. But he used it on Sasuke before, when he was 7. He was fine, then. There's no reason he shouldn't be fine now, and even if he isn't, even if Itachi damaged his mind somehow. Itachi calculated the risks. He predicted the outcome. He can't have miscalculated, he never miscalculates. Jiraiya and Kakashi continue to speak. They've moved on to talking strategy, and are now trying to figure out the best possible way to separate him and Kisame. Their conversation becomes background noise. For a moment, Itachi is frozen, wrestling with indecision. His desire to avoid a fight wars with his need to know what has happened to his brother, what he's done to his brother. He hesitates, caught between logic and emotion. He might never wake up. Itachi activates his Sharingan. Pushing aside the branches concealing him, he steps forward. Check the description for the links to the author.